you think scaling up SMEs is a daunting task, then you're not alone. Majority of the SMEs across the globe find scaling up the business a daunting task. Actually, it's simpler than what you imagine it to be. All you need to do is get a good grasp of the fundamentals and open your minds to explore broader perspectives and a bit of lateral thinking, and you will see how quickly and simply you can scale your business. Hi, my name is Anirvan Sen. I'm the CEO of Fifth Chrome and the founder of the Promise High Performance Framework. Today, I'm going to walk you through how to scale up exponentially your business, unlocking 10x growth. So I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to grow your business exponentially. So first, let's explore the challenges faced by SMEs in order to scale their business. Most of the SMEs struggle to scale. Over the past few years, we have researched, we have gained from our own experience, we have worked with venture capitalists, private equities. At the same time, we have interviewed more than a couple of hundred people, SME owners, business owners, to get their perspective. Here are some of the things that we found that SMEs struggle with their scaling up journey. First is insufficient strategic firepower. What we mean by this is majority of the SMEs are so focused on their next quarter, next 6 months business horizon that they often either do not have the latitude in order to focus on their strategic needs, or they don't have the right expertise, experience in order to do a meaningful job of creating this 3 to 5 years kind of a roadmap visualization. And that's why we call it insufficient strategic firepower. The second thing is majority of the SMEs we've seen struggle to harness the full market potential. They have limited resources, limited capabilities in order to harness the market, but more importantly, they don't necessarily have access or the awareness of the full market potential. The third is SMEs tend to be very informal and tends to have a lot of interactions and a lot of discussions, especially with the SME owners, in order to bring about revenue generation, bring about operational disciplines, bring about product and services generation. What we find is that they often don't have what we call a business model and which could be scaled. The fourth one is we've seen the difference between the way employees operate in SME versus in some of the scaled or the large companies. Their potentials are not fully utilized. What we've seen is in many cases, the SME owners just want the employees, their people to just get some tasks done, some activities done. And that is not necessarily utilizing the full potential they have. So these were a few examples of why SMEs struggle to scale. At the same time, we know that the pressure to perform has become enormously bigger than what we had in the past. With the global connectivity, with the ability to get work done from remote locations, clubbed together with the consolidation that's taking place in different industries, it has become very difficult for the SMEs to survive. They have to be hyper competitive in order to survive. Examples are, in the past, you would have a neighborhood gym which would be owned by a neighborhood person, and that was it. But now, all across the globe, you have gym chains, you have restaurant chains, you have hair salon chains. It's no longer only the bastion of SME owners to be in these businesses. The rule as we speak is getting changed every single day. At the same time, you as the SME owner are likely to be faced with talent challenges. And these challenges are almost everywhere across the globe for the SMEs. In fact, the common complaint is, I can't find the right person. And this has been a struggle where a lot of you SME owners would be able to connect with. And the last one is that there is always a time struggle for the SME owners. I'm sure if you're an SME owner, you would not get enough time in the day in order to manage your business. It is always you have to work extra hours, long hours to keep your business afloat. But why is that? So let's spend the next few minutes understanding what SMEs are and how are they different from the rest of the organization types. First of all, we talk about two kinds of SMEs. SMEs that are lifestyle businesses and SMEs that are scaling up growth businesses. So what are the lifestyle businesses? Typically, an entrepreneur, when they get started in their journey, they start building a company from scratch. What we find is that the aspiration of the company is directly dictated, defined by the SME owner. So in other words, when I start my company, I would visualize what I want my company to be. My aspirations, but then driven into the business aspirations, right? Now, over a period of time, there are also what we call personal aspirations. So the reason why I want to create a business, apart from creating, let's say, a business that has that provides services or products, there's also a personal aspiration that's attached to it. The personal aspiration often is, I want freedom, I want independence of thinking, I should be able to contribute to the world, I should be able to, on a personal side, be able to afford a nice living, which has a nice car, nice house, be able to send my kids through a university and be able to support them in their journey. But also, I should be able to take vacations to nice exotic places. And that is my personal sort of desire in many of our cases as the SME owners. But what we find is that once you are able to get to the lifestyle that you want, your desires, personal desires, your personal aspirations are no longer as competitive as your business requirements are. But because you have a pretty healthy and a pretty sort of aspirational living that you had always desired for, the compelling reason to change is no longer there. You're not being pushed, you're not being challenged enough from a personal perspective in order for you to grow the business. And that's okay, because you have got what we call a lifestyle business, and typically what we find is, between 5 to 10, maybe $15 million businesses or equivalent of that are the kind of businesses which fall in this category. In fact, there are in different parts of the world, the numbers could be lower, or the numbers could be higher. On the other side, we find that there are businesses that need to scale either to survive, or the owners wants to make a difference. They have that inner desire to make it happen. That's where we call them scaling up growth businesses. So these are the businesses where the SME owners need to get good understanding of how to scale up. So let's look at some of the constraints and dependencies and compare and contrast them between small and medium-sized enterprises versus scaled and large businesses. So I know there's a lot of text that's mentioned here, but essentially pictorial representation is this. On the left-hand side is a typical SME owner. Some of you may be able to relate to this. A typical SME owner is the person who's responsible for strategy management, for operational management, for financial management, for commercial management, which is sales and marketing, and for talent management. In fact, many of you would probably be spending more time on the three elements: operational, financial, and sales and marketing, compared to strategy management and or talent management. On the other side, if you look at the scaled and large businesses, what you find is that there's no longer a single person, but a team of professional managers who are managing the company. You normally would have a robust strategy that has growth built in it. It's moving and taking your company on a growth path over the next few years. And more importantly, you have the third block, which is systemization. So you've got your policies and procedures in place, you've got your technology and tools in place, you've got your decision making, you've got your roles and responsibilities worked out, you've got your OKRs, the objectives and key results, or KPIs, the key performance indicators by which you can manage your company. So as you can see from this pictorial representation, on the left hand side, there is a single person who's trying to do everything. And on the other side, you have division of responsibilities, you have delegation, you have professional teams that can do the work. And this is the most fundamental reason why SMEs struggle to scale, because many of you as the SME owner are trying to do and run everything. In fact, it's quite common to hear that SME owners often are told that you are the only reason why your company works. If you had moved out of the company, then your company is going to collapse in no time. And I'm sure this would resonate with lots of you. So what do you do about it? So I'm going to walk you through how to unlock ability to scale, how to think from being the sole person on one side to create a professional organization with a robust strategy and all the systemization in place. So, as I mentioned, over the past few years, we have interviewed hundreds of people from various types of company, various industries, various sizes of the company, because we've seen what good looks like in some of the larger companies versus where SMEs stand, etc. And on the basis of that, we've created this framework. Interestingly, this framework is a business strategy framework on one side and methodology to realize a business strategy on the other side. So it's a combination of a framework and a methodology. So first item I would bring your attention to the right-hand side of the page is high performance is an outcome. You need to think that your company is capable of getting high performance. Okay, without that mindset, you'll never be able to create a high performance organization. So it starts with you, that you need to believe that high performance is possible in my organization, and with the right ingredients, you can achieve high performance in your own organization. Okay, and this is the prerequisite of creating a 10x growth. Second thing is, we identified several factors that create constraint, that are the bottleneck that is stopping your company from scaling up. But on the other side, we also found, especially the high performing, especially the stellar growth companies, they were using the same constraints, but they had configured in such a way that they're no longer constraining the growth. In fact, they actually had a catalytic effect in most of the cases. We identified 7 such factors that can be unlocked, exploited to create this exponential growth. We also found another thing, that these 7 factors don't necessarily all work in isolation, but there is a system of systems thinking where these factors often influence and impact each other. So what are these 7 factors? Let's get started. So the first one that we look at is what we call strategic future. When we had shaped the model in our initial days, we used to call this as strategy. And then we figured out a lot of people were getting confused by strategy. In their minds, they were running strategy, but the way the word got used was quite loosely used. Often people confused operations and strategy and tactics and all that stuff. So instead, we replaced it by what we call strategic future. So what is strategic future? The first step that you need to think about is, what or where do I see my business in 3 to 5 years? You need to be able to visualize your future. Now, what's future visualization? Future visualization is all about what sort of revenue you're going to have, how many people are you going to have, how many branches or locations are you going to operate from, what sort of service lines are you going to have, what additional service lines or product lines are you going to put in the market, are you going to use different marketing channels, are you going to use different ways to connect with your customers, your potential customers, etc. So we talk about partnerships, we talk about different channels of your presence in the digital world, etc. So in other words, as an owner, you should be able to visualize how your company is going to be in 3 to 5 years. Now, obviously, from our perspective, we add an extra bit, which is called a BHAG thinking, which is big, hairy, audacious goal thinking, right? Now, what is that? A big, hairy, audacious goal thinking is essentially allows you to start opening your mindset, explore opportunities that you normally won't think of. You need to develop that courage in order to think big. And that's where you can then start shaping up your future. You will be able to shape up the vision of your future. The second part, why is it important, is to have future visualization, is because once in your mind you have clarity on what the future looks like, you'll be able to tell a story to the others. You'll be able to tell the story to your employees, to your partners, to your customers, to your suppliers. And that's where, when you start repeating it, people start believing in you. Rather than if you do it just once and put it in the drawer and never mention it again, people are like, oh, that was good to hear, but nothing happened. But if you keep repeatedly using your story, your purpose of why you want to grow, where you want to grow, people will start believing in you. People will start rallying behind you to make it happen. So that's the second part, which we call the purpose. The future visualization is used to define purpose, the 1-paragraph story. The third one is, once you've defined your future, and let's say your current capabilities are here, you need to identify what these gaps are, strategic capability gaps. There are usually about 8 to 12 prominent capabilities that may impact or that you need to develop in order to get that future visualization that you talked about. It could be pricing, it could be the way you market, it could be partnerships, it could be the way you use distribution channels, social media channels, it could be the inventory, it could be the location where you operate, it could be the kind of people that you have, the expertise that you have in-house. So all of these things essentially define and characterize your strategic future. So that's the first factor that we talk about. The second factor that we talk about is innovation and critical thinking. When we talk about innovation, and it doesn't matter whether you're big, small, or medium-sized companies, even today, and especially in the large companies, they would keep the innovation cells, the innovation centers, the R&D centers separately from the headquarters. In fact, innovation is often treated in isolation compared to the rest of the organization. Not only that, innovation tends to focus largely on products, on services, their features. But over the last 15 years, what you'll see is majority of the innovation that have taken place have actually taken place not on products and services, features, but the way people interact, the way people experience a certain thing, the way marketing is done, the way companies are creating awareness. Let's take Uber as an example. At the end of the day, this requirement was serviced by taxi companies, and typical taxi company owner would have 5-10 taxis, and they would operate, and they would have drivers, etc. And they would provide taxi services. But Uber completely revolutionized this, the way customers would interact with a taxi service provider. At the end of the day, Uber, likes of Uber, Bolt, Grab in different parts of the world, would still give you a taxi service like the way it was been done in the past. But they addressed the customer problems. They addressed the way customers would like to utilize, experience this taxi service. And that's where they did the innovation. Uber is just an example. Airbnb is another great example. Netflix, another big example, right? So there are different ways that companies are innovating, and majority of them are taking place outside of what we call a traditional product features and services. The second component is critical thinking. And there are two parts of the critical thinking here, right? One is you as the SME owner feel proud about your achievement. And why not? You've grown your company from nothing to a certain level, okay? So you have developed an instinct that has made your company grow and survive over the years. At the same time, these thinking often can be the reason why you're not being able to scale up. Now, keep in mind, you need a certain kind of skills in order to grow your company from scratch to somewhere. There's a famous book which is called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And the same thing is also in the SME. The way you scaled up your company till here, you can't use the same methods necessarily in order to grow from here to the next level. And that's why you need to open your mind to critical thinking, whether it's terms of strategy management, operational management, financial management, talent management, or you talk about sales and marketing management, commercial management, right? You should be able to critically think about what you did in the past and what is likely to work in the future versus not. It is not about what you've done in the past as a criticism, but it is about critically thinking what happened in the past, how relevant it's going to stay in the future, right? So that's one aspect of critical thinking. The second aspect of critical thinking is lateral thinking. You need to open up your mind of thinking about different kinds of solution, different kinds of thinking that's possible. And this is another thing where we find SME owners don't necessarily spend enough time or put enough focus on lateral thinking, because this is where the gold mine is, which is essentially the way you run your business. Now you open it up for lateral thinking will give you opportunities to think beyond your current levels. And that's where you can really get exponential growth. A very good example that I follow is I've seen a lot of SMEs who work in Netherlands. They may have gained a certain good market share in Netherlands, right? But that's where the constraint is. There are similar opportunities in Germany or in Belgium or in Denmark or in the UK, but which the SME owners never exploited. With minimal effort, these SME owners can actually exploit those opportunities in the neighboring countries. And that's where, if you don't laterally think about your businesses, it's not going to happen. So lateral thinking and critical thinking are one of the first catalyst constraints that we try and unlock in order to create that 10x thinking. So strategic future and innovation and critical thinking are the two factors that sets the tone, that sets the direction, and that sets the velocity for the SMEs who are looking for scaling up. As you could see, the future visualization gives you a touch and feel of what your future would look like. The strategic capabilities gap would make you understand what are the things that you need to focus on, what are the capabilities that you need to develop. And then innovation and critical thinking will give you the ability to unlock your mind, to usher in new perspectives, to usher in new ideas on how to grow your business. So these two factors are very important to setting the direction and setting the tone. Next is organizational hierarchy or organizational structure and leadership. In my own experience, I've seen huge number of transformations fail. And when I spoke to industry specialists and practitioners, they echoed pretty much the same sentiment, which is majority of the transformations fail. It doesn't matter if you are an SME, a mid-sized company, or a large company. Majority of the transformations fail because their leaders were not aligned, or there were leaders who were not necessarily fully bought into the transformation ideas, whether the idea itself, whether it was the destination, whether it was the method, the approach, whether the implementation details. They were opposed to doing certain things, and which essentially created a situation where they either acted as showstoppers or they acted as massive blockers in the transformation journey. In the cases of SME, you as the owners need to figure out who are the people who would drive or take your company to the next level versus who are the people that may not have the necessary skills or the expertise to make it happen. And this is not an easy discussion because many of these guys would have been with you for a number of years. They're almost like part of the family, and yet this is the time when you need to critically decide what's going to be the new organization structure, what's going to be the new kinds of leaders that you need in order to develop your strategic, your competitive advantage, to develop those strategic capabilities. This is where you really need to weigh in what's more important, your company or some of the people that you were working with in the past. And again, I'm not saying you need to get rid of those people. What I'm saying is, as you go along this journey, you need to bring them on. As Jim Collins had said, you need to have the right people in the bus. Or we could extend it, we could say you need to have the right people in the right seats in the bus. And that's very, very critical because this is where your foundation gets built. So the third factor is the factor that starts building the foundation. The next one is what we call as management system or management operating system. This is the heart of how you would run your business. This is the way you've run your business in the past. This is the way you need to run your business in the future, right? So what are the things? We talk about policies and procedures. We talk about tools and technology. We talk about process maps. We talk about roles and responsibilities in decision making. We talk about key performance indicators or objectives and key results, which is also known as OKR. So this is the heart and soul of how a business gets run on a day-to-day basis. So between number 3, organizational structure and leadership, and number 4, management operating system will create the base for you. The next one is people and professional development. After speaking to so many successful companies, we figured out that one of the areas that those successful companies were able to unlock was mass people participation. And mass people participation was only possible when those people were skilled professionally, when the people were skilled or given power skills. So for example, if you compare a junior accountant in a small company versus a large company CFO, you'll see that technically they both have similar qualifications. They both are probably chartered accountants. But when you compare the power skills, the professional skills of the CFO is likely to have leadership skills, strategic thinking, business acumen, commercial astuteness, talent management skills, resourcefulness. These are just a few examples of how a CFO of a large company be successful with those kind of skills. On the other side, the junior accountant in a small company is likely to just focus on his technical skills of doing accounting. and that's where you see the successful companies are able to unlock other capabilities in their people by giving them people skills, power skills, professional skills. And the next one is employee experience. For the first time in the history of mankind, we have people from different generations coming together. So we still have some people from the baby boomers. We definitely have Gen X's. We have the millennials, the Gen Ys. Then we have Gen Z. And we have seen some early Gen Alphas coming through the door, right? Now, what is the problem? The problem is majority of companies are still stuck in the 20th century, thinking of loyalty, of this commitment towards the company, following the senior leaders being more skilled, more experienced than you. And that's the thinking of the 20th century, right? Because your senior people usually would have more experience than you, would have developed more expertise. But now that world is changing. First, that the loyalty is no longer taken for granted. Second thing is the employee experience, the experience of the employees in the millennials and Gen Z is far greater than the loyalty of the company, which is where we see that there is a major generational difference between these two. Not only that, what we find is, especially in the SMEs, especially where the SME owners are from either baby boomers or Gen X, they tend to take a lot more top-down approach compared to the millennial or the Gen Z entrepreneurs who have started handling or managing these companies very differently, which is why employee experience in the millennials or the Gen Z-led companies tend to have a very different sort of employee experience compared to the traditional baby boomer-led or a Gen X-led. Just to give you an example, having beanbags in the office, have the ability to have, let's say, some of the other artifacts in the office, like paintings on the wall, graffiti, having a ping pong table in the office, etc. These are all there to create employee experience. Now, incidentally, you will see that typically where the employee experience is encouraged, there are actually people playing ping pong game, right? Or table tennis, right? On the other side, I've seen companies where they've heard, they've seen, and say, yeah, it's a great idea. We need to get this to increase the employee experience, the positiveness of the employee experience. But on the other side, what we find is that nobody actually uses the table tennis table to play games. They're there to show that, yeah, we also believe in providing a positive employee experience, but in reality, they're still very top-down, still very 20th century thinking. So again, employee experience, another factor, exponential factor that can create humongous growth opportunities, but that's where a lot of SMEs, especially if you belong to a Gen X or baby boomer generation, this is where you need to open up your mind, shift your mindset. And the last one is rewards and recognition. When we talk about rewards, we're not talking about compensation and benefit. In fact, in many of the cases where I speak with people, I always tell them, I said, compensation and benefit is like salary. It is salary which an employee gets because they're employed by you. It is for the effort, the work that they put in, they are being compensated, which is why it's a compensation, compensated for the work that they put in. So let's not confuse it with rewards. On the other side, reward should be given when people exceed expectations. In fact, the other part, which is the recognition, is the most underutilized motivational tool that an organization can use. And it does not have to be monetary recognition. Even the fact saying that XYZ, you've done a great job, thanks for the support, is a great motivator. And you and I, we both know motivated employees produce far better results, far more productive than a non-motivated employees. So this is the seventh one, which is rewards and recognition. So for us, as we say that these individual factors are important, but when you bring them together and work as a system of systems, that's where magic happens. In fact, that's what we call the promise. The promise is an acronym which weaves together all of these seven factors to create an ecosystem or system of systems to create that environment to scale up for SMEs, or for that matter, creating the high performance environment, right? So let's kind of summarize what we do with the framework, right? So the first thing we look at is we dissect an organization and start looking at the strategic future, the innovation and critical thinking, and all of the other elements. And then we start configuring them in a way that would give you future growth, that would give you scalability. Once that has been experimented with and we found success, we then start adopting them. When these adoption become almost second nature to us, it becomes behavior. Once you've developed that level of behavior, you can then start creating employee values. And employee values being consistently and constantly used in a certain direction is going to give you that 10x growth. So the advantage of promise. So promise is flexible. As you saw, there are 7 factors. You can choose any one of them to work on and you can still create an impact. The second is it's simple. Promise is an acronym. It's easy to remember. The way we explain the sequence of events, it's easy to understand. So that's why it's simple. It's comprehensive. It's a 360 working of creating a business model, creating a strategy model, which is also methodology that you can get scaling up, you can get high growth, high performance, 10x thinking, etc. As you must have noticed by now that the methodology is extremely employee centric. So while we understand the importance of technology, the importance of other aspects, we know that in order to unlock and create a business that is hyper competitive, it's the employees that make the difference. But employees need that structure, need that focus, need that way, the approach, the methodology to make it happen. We also looked at certain force multipliers. On one side, that's innovation and critical thinking. On the other side, we've got people and professional development. We've got employee experience. And the last one is it's easy to drive alignment. It's easy to get your leadership team onboarded and who can then follow you or follow your vision, follow your purpose, follow your strategic future the way you want them to follow. You can mobilize them, you can get them to rally behind you and make it happen. So that's what the promise advantage is. Now, you may ask, how do I make it happen? How do I actually execute this? So for your benefit, we've also created this journey so that you can use the framework and see how it pans over a period of time. So we typically look at a horizon of 36 months, which is 3 years. And that's what, remember, we talked about the 3-year visualization during our strategic thinking. We also talk about 5 years, but for demonstration purposes, illustration purposes, we're going to use future visualization at the 3 years period. We then take these 3 years and divide them into 12 90-day cycles, right? Why 90-day cycles? This is something that we learned from our agile thinking, wherein we saw that this particular journey has a lot of uncertainties as we move along. And because we have a lot of uncertainties, we cannot use a waterfall model. We have to use an agile model. One of the best ways to yield maximum result from an agile thinking is to create these 90-day blocks. So it's almost like 90-day projects in which certain things are going to happen. So we put some sort of capabilities around a 90-day mark, which we want to unleash every 90 days. And then we take each of the 90 days and divide them into 6 sprints. So each sprint is about 2 weeks. And this is where we look at individual aspects of the 7 factors, and then we start unlocking various aspects of it. So for example, the first 3 to 6 months, we work on strategic futures, innovation, and critical thinking. Okay, it's very easy to say, hey, you know what, why does it take so long? Why can't you just sit down and gather around a table and draw up a future? Again, based on experience, we see that because we're talking about shifting mindset, because we're talking about ability to open up things, because we're talking about experimenting, therefore, you need to give it time. It's not a recipe that's a magic pill that you swallow and then everything changes overnight. It takes time, and which is why in some cases you can achieve it in 2 months. In some other cases, you probably have to work up to 6 months. So in the first 3 to 6 months, with let's say between 6 to 12 sprints, we are able to get the SME owners to work with this, let's say, new kind of thinking, new approach, etc., visualize the future. And this is where we kind of map it with the lean canvas, where this stage is known as the problem solution fit. once we have a good understanding, good idea of future visualization, we have articulated what the offerings are going to be, what are the different market channels we're going to use, what sort of customer persona that we're going to pursue, etc. Once that base is fixed, that's when we start building the next stage, which is the organization structure and leadership. That's the first one we target, because once you start getting the right people in the bus, they can then start building the right management system. They can start building the KPIs, the OKRs. Now, again, in many cases, we are not talking about building something from scratch. We're talking about taking your existing setup and then modifying it. But in other cases, you will have to build many of these things from scratch. So these management systems have to be built once we start getting a good traction on organizational structure and leadership styles. The third thing that we look at, and this is roughly in going into kind of the second year, is when we start unlocking people's capabilities. Now, some people may say, hey, why don't you unlock people's capabilities from day one? The reality is, in many cases, if you do not have the fundamentals in place, which is the direction and the base, which is through organizational structure and leadership, even if you come up with lots and lots of ideas from people, even if you skill them up, if they're not able to use the skill because you do not have the right platforms, the right organization structures in place, you'll not be able to monetize them. You'll not be able to take those opportunities and fully exploit them. So that's why it's a staged approach. The same thing, which is the next level, is employee experience. Now, when we say employee experience or rewards and recognition, which happens at later stages, what we're not saying is you should not look at employee experience from day one. Employee experience does count, but employee experience with the view of creating a scalability is a very different ballgame, right? So while you still need to look at employee experience right up front, especially after the 6-7 month period, but employee experience and rewards and recognition needs to be finally formalized once you've gone through the organizational structure, management system, and people and professional development, right? This is where you start further fine-tuning your employee experience. Now, again, as we go along, keep in mind that every 90 days you have an opportunity to go back and tweak something. So for example, when you're doing people and professional development, you figure out that the leadership or the leader that you put in place does not have the right skills or does not have the right attitude or does not have the right structure, you can go back and make those changes. The idea is by the time you hit the employee experience and the rewards and recognition zone, you have largely fully exploited the other parts, because that's when you can actually just focus on scaling the business system, because you've got the rest of it there and you use employee experience, rewards and recognition, and people and professional development part of it in order to scale. And that's what is mentioned here. So typically the second year is largely used for creating a good fundamental base, especially in the first half of the year. In the second half of the year, you start unlocking the scalability. You start working with a business model that's scalable, right? So, and in order to create that scale, these are the further refinement that you need to do. So this is kind of a typical rough 3 years kind of time frame. Now, is scaling possible within 6 months or a year? The answer is absolutely yes. If you could potentially accelerate many of these thinking, the answer is absolutely yes. Is it possible for applying technology and get that exponential growth overnight? The answer is also yes. But at the same time, I must highlight that the exponential growth where companies grow like crazy, super crazy in 6 months or a year are few and far between. Those are exceptions. Majority of the companies would get that scaling up in about a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. So just keep that in mind. Again, I'm not saying it is possible versus not possible. What I'm saying is whatever companies need to go through, they will still need to follow a pretty similar approach to scaling up, but it probably is going to happen in a very condensed time manner. And on the other side, anything more than 3 years to scale up, it's not going to work. So 3 years is the maximum horizon that you should look at in order for your companies to scale up. So now just let me give you a quick example of what a typical 90-day sprint would look like, right? So this is the first 90 days. We talk about sprint 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth, right? We talk about the problem to be solved, the job to be done. We talk about unlocking promise. We talk about new solutions, packages, offerings, etc., developing those, testing those ideas in the market, etc., and then keep refining it. So just a quick example that I wanted to share with you. So that's pretty much it, what I wanted to share with you. So if you want to engage with us and continue the discussion or see how we work with SMEs, just to give you some examples of different services we provide, here is the way that you should contact us. We are on all the social media that gets used, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as you can visit our website, www.fifthchrome.com, or send us an email at info@fifthchrome.com. If you like this video and you found some value, then obviously please don't forget to like it, and also share it with your friends or colleagues who may find the content valuable. And if you want to see more videos coming up talking about either the Promise Framework or how we can achieve growth in a business, then please subscribe to our channel. All right, with that, I would conclude the session today. Wish you all the best. This is Anirvan signing off. Here's to promise a high growth, a scaling up of SMEs.